Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I'm Lucas and welcome back to another track guide on F122. Today we've got Miami and yeah, I've got a hot lap from, or I think this is an online lap from the 25th of July last year. So this is, I've not even watched the lap. This is, yeah, I just noticed the only one I've actually got recorded. Because the other lap I have recorded in Miami is like time trial. But point being, we're going to jump straight into it and I'm going to give you guys a bit of a track guide around Miami. So without further ado, starting the lap, you have a slight difference to when you are ending the lap. You can technically go wider here to make the distance a bit longer before you start the lap to get more speed, but I just prefer to, keep the momentum high. Don't hug the line too tight. You want to make sure you're, not having to bring yourself over too much. So just letting the car smoothly drift over to the outside, up to 8th gear, and then this is where we're starting to look for some reference points. Now you have a few reference points that you can use. You have the start of this curb here, which is probably one of the most visual obvious ones. You also have the marker board here behind the light panel, and then a 50 meter board here, 100 meter board here. And yeah, the way I do it is, and you also have to use every bit of the track as well. You want to make sure you're not exceeding the track limit on the entry into turn 1. You want to make sure you're opening up the corner as much as possible, and then you're heading into turn 1. And as you can see there, just once you basically, just as you pass the start of this orange curb, you immediately start to apply the brakes, give or take, depending on what setup you're using or whatever it may be. But yeah, just after you start past that curb, that's when you're starting to yoink onto the brakes, and the circuit rises up a bit as well. So you can lock up the front right a little bit or lose the car to a bit here or there if you're not careful. So that's something else to watch out for. Down to 4th gear. Well, I mean, there's probably a few different gear combinations you can use, but I think 4th is what I use. Going into here, I dare say you'll probably see people using 3rd, but 4th is the one that I use. And then the circuit sort of levels out a little bit once you go up that little elevation under braking. And then on the apex, you want to be, you obviously just traditional trail braking into the corner, and then you don't really want to use all of this curb if you can get away with it. As you can see, we're sort of nibbling the up to the highest point. We don't want to be going over onto where the curb sort of drops down. Because you just want to keep it smooth over there. And then from here on, you can see we've short shifted, and what I'm going to get to now is it's all about the exit through here. So into turn 1, you do not want to be overshooting it under the brakes. You will want to be winding it in, meeting the apex at the clipping point. And then we're short shifting, which you don't necessarily need to short shift to 5th, but that's just what I prefer to do, just so that I can be a bit more aggressive on the power and hold a gear for longer through this section of corners, because turn 1, 2 and 3 are all interconnected lap time wise. So this is all traction. This is really trying to get the power down and carry as much speed through this exit as humanly possible. Getting on the power now, we do reach full throttle briefly. That's down to 5th gear. If you were in 4th gear, it'd be much, much harder to get to full power. So that's 5th gear coming in clutch a little bit. And yeah, you want to make sure you've brought the car over just about, I mean, give or take a car width, depending at what point you take it from. So you're leaving some room on the inside. You don't want to be all the way to the left, as you're going to be too tight for this left-hand section. You want to be making sure that you can get a good run through here. Now, I opted to... Now, this is also setup dependent. If you've got the car quite low, you might not actually be able to do this. Or, I mean, this was done with... this wasn't with 60 FPS either, so maybe this is even easier than it was. This was 240 FPS capped, because I didn't know about FPS until way later than this, so it was... this is maybe even easier to do now, maybe, I'm not sure, but... what I decided to do was be quite aggressive on the initial phase of this curb, and the reason I do that is, as you can see, we save it, we chunk over it quite a bit, but you see the car sort of pushes itself off the curb as we sort of go over it. So we're sort of aiming to... Oh, I had a little bit of a stutter there. I'll play it normally. So yeah, but keeping the car consistently loaded, balancing the throttle, and using quite a bit of that curb because it sort of bounces you away over it, back off it. Anyway, and that allows us to utilize the road a bit more. And then through here we are using quite a bit, but it's not quite as extreme as it was in turn 2. And again, that's all in the aim of getting the power down as much as possible. And again, we also short shift slightly to 6th. We have a small lift through turn 3. It's not necessarily possible to do these corners flat, so if you watch the throttle trace now, half throttle, banging it back up to full throttle just now, lifting out a little bit, 6th gear, utilising the curb, and then you're just bringing it back over to the inside. Now, a key tip for turn 3 is you want to bring it sorry, I can't speak. You want to bring it back to the inside, as it actually saves a couple of hundred than if you were to sweep out really wide, because you save distance. And the way the tyre scrub works in the F1 games allows you to save time. Now, that's the first 3 corners done. Very tricky to get right, and very easy to lose a lot of lap time very early on your lap. So, heading on now into sector... Well, this is still sector 1, but basically the second section of sector 1. And again, it's all combined corners. Every corner interlinks to the other, and you've got to be carrying speed through them all to benefit from it. So, into turn 4 now, we have a 50 metre board that we can use as a reference. So just after we pass the 50 metre board, we start to initiate the turn in. We are up to 8th gear. You can actually hold 7th. That's down to preference. And we carry in speed in 8th, and then let's see where that curve begins. So yeah, just as we basically approach this curb, I mean, we're already braking quite a bit earlier on, but as you get to that curb, we're sort of downshifting to 7th if you want our idea of gears. So yeah, very light braking into here as well. You're not wanting to take a lot of speed out. It's just about feeding the car in, just letting it rotate into the corner, holding 7th gear. It's a little bit stuttery, so I do apologise. So yeah, we actually take 7th through there. I'm actually going to play it normally first, actually, it's a bit easier. Down to 7th, using a bit of curb. Down to 6th, utilising the curb nicely as well. Very easy to get the curbs wrong through that section. That section's really unusual with track limits as well. Now, you saw the section fluid. Now I'll play it a bit more slow motion because it was quite hard to describe. Because I haven't actually watched the lap back yet, so I can't remember every detail. But yeah, diving into here, very light trail braking. And you can actually see we're technically left foot braking. We're still on the power here, as we are, still carrying so much momentum. So we're actually a little bit on the throttle here as well. Technically, you shouldn't do this in many ways, but we were, focusing on the momentum mainly, which was the key through here. So it didn't really do us any harm. Holding 7th gear. And you can see, we don't want to use, through this high-speed section, if you put the middle of the car on these curbs, it will shove you straight back off the curbs. You've got to be really careful with that. But we utilise it really well, because you do want to use these curbs to help try and hook the front left or the front right into these corners. And again, you want to bring yourself over to the left through this left-hander. And you don't want to be, because you don't want, if you're too far to the right here, you'll scrub the momentum for this right-hander, then the left-hander after. So you've got to think about each corner, setting yourself up as you go through. Down to 6th gear, and you can see there, we are actually fully over that curb, but just, you can see the centre point of the car, where it sort of grounds out. We are just, just perfectly not clipping it, because that allowed us to, as the sort of the curb flat, this is a flat curb here, you've got to notice the difference as well. This is a rounded curb that you can mount over, then it flattens out, so that's where it's basically normal tarmac. So you've got to sort of aim for these points, holding 6th gear, opting to not use much of this curb and just run it more naturally, and then into this, this left hand, it's actually very tricky to sight a braking point. So you need to make sure you don't go too early or too deep. It's very hard to get it right. It's probably better to go a bit too deep into this corner, because if you're too tight and you get remotely near this curb, you're going to be in trouble. So yeah, short shifting to 5th though, trail braking as well. Just the trail braking around this track is really, really important. Short shifting to 5th, balancing the power, full power now. And another key tip as well is try, if you can, not to put your whole car over this curb, as you can actually get, you can ground out the car and we will spin for days. And now we're on to the straight line section now. DRS open, keeping it to the left, saving the distance, that's the key. We actually bring it over to the right quite early, but that's because we want to set the car up now as we head into the super slow speed complex, which is super tricky getting power down. Getting power down and trail braking round here are so important for lap time. So heading into this section now, 100 metre boards, That is the board you need to be looking out for going into this section, and you can see just before we get to 100 meters, not after, just as we're about to reach the 100 meter board, we are starting to brake really heavily. Now, we're fully on the brakes, using all the track lid, which is really important. Then we're starting to feed it into the corner now, we're applying the lock, winding out the brake, holding 4th gear, meeting that apex perfectly. Now, you do not, it's quite easy to overshoot this apex, don't panic if you do, because it's more about, you know, keeping the momentum going and getting on the power. So yeah, if you hit this curb a little bit, or if you miss the curb a little bit, that's okay. It's more important to get the exit nailed, and as long as you're not overshooting it massively, if that makes sense. So it's more about, you know, the process than anything. And yeah, we opt for 4th gear. You can use 3rd, but I opted for 4th. I had a very different... In hindsight, there's actually different gear techniques you can do. I'm going to walk you through them. So we're in 4th gear there. You can actually use 3rd, then 4th, and then you're back down to 3rd again, then 4th through this section here. But there's 2 different ways of doing it. I'll explain it after I've went through here. So you're on the power. We've short shifted to 5th, mainly so that we can get on the power much more aggressively. As you can see, we're full power now because we're so high on the gear. Now we're keeping the distance tight. Now that's the key thing. You don't want to be... You can, if you overshoot it a bit, you're a little bit more over to the right, which can compromise you for getting the angle into the right-hander. But as you can see, this is also a key track limit section. You've got to watch what you're doing through here. So you can see just keeping it within track limits, down to 4th, and then you want to make sure that you are keeping it nice and tight to this wall, but not too much, because you need to focus on the clipping, basically the second apex, if you like, or the point of the corner where you want to clip, which is where this wall is here. We are super close to it there. Because if you're too tight to the wall here, let's say you're running the car really tight to the wall here, you're going to be way too tight for here, and you're going to compromise your line on the exit. And that's the key through here. So holding down to 4th, up to 5th again, trail braking slightly, getting on the power, feeding the power, finally full power. Again, 5th gear is the key for getting on the power in that regard. But the problem is, well, not the problem is, the alternate way you can do this, and I want to give you guys that ulterior perspective, I guess, as well, is you can use 3rd gear for this corner, for example, on the apex, then immediately short shift to 4th, and instead of going 5th, you can use 4th gear, which will mean that you probably need to be a bit more delicate on the power, but it means that the rear, well, basically the diff is going to not behave as, in a way, as locked, in a way. I hope I've got that terminology right, but basically, if you get too aggressive on the power in 5th gear, you can actually snap the rear away a bit more abruptly. But if you're in 4th, it's a bit more progressive, and the car's a little bit more, a bit, as I say, progressive on getting on the power, and it doesn't snap away as aggressively because you're in more of a correct rev range, if that makes sense. Hopefully, I've not butchered that explanation. But basically, you are holding different gears through this section if you do that. So you can go 4th gear, then you can go down to 3rd, then back up to 4th gear, and the 5th gear here, you can get on the power, let's say, quite well, but if you do it wrong, at this phase in the corner, you can actually snap away. So holding 4th gear means you maybe need to be a bit more delicate on the power, but you actually have a bit more of a consistent progression in the way the rear of the car is going to rotate, but maybe not the more optimum way of getting onto the power. Different techniques, different things work with different setups, different driving styles, but with this, we're able to get on the power so early as well. So that was a key for us. But anyway, into 5th gear, then you've got this really infamously tricky left-hander, where I think we actually might invalidate on this lap, maybe, but we'll see, because it's kind of BS sometimes if you do or you don't. But yeah, lifting out the power already, as you can see. Then we're onto the brakes. Now, again, different gears, different techniques through here. We opt for 4th, but you can use 3rd through here. It's down to your own experimentation. I just wanted to mention the gears as well, because I know that's a key thing around this track. So yeah, trail braking in, and you're trail braking into this apex and utilizing all of this road. We are, you know, you could, this is like so close to invalidation. And then, you know, you're holding 4th gear, and this using all of the road here opens up this right-hander where we want to be cutting over the inside, because again, it's opening up the corner. And this is surprising. This is surprisingly invalid. Like, it must be only just invalid. I don't know how. It's like, yeah, I don't know how that feels quite an weird invalidation to me. I know it looks like at this point you're over it, but depending where the car is from the front to the rear, I don't know, it's just weird. But yeah, you have to cut over it. So sometimes you can, get it wrong and invalidate. Sometimes you can cut it. It depends on the angle you cut it as well. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. But then, yeah, getting on the power, we opted for the higher gear solution because it means we're more aggressive on the power. Trail braking, down to third here. And you can actually nibble this curb a tiny bit as well, just to, open up the corner a slight bit more. Then I short shift up to fourth. Getting on the power, again, the exit out of here is really, really important. You can gain or lose a 1/10.5 in this section if you get it right or wrong. So I'll just play it through fluid, so that you can see the sort of line in the technique. Down to third gear, using that curb a little bit, banging on the power, and there's that section fluidly. One more corner to negotiate, and it's actually slightly off camber, so it's quite tricky. It is the traction zone and the exit isn't exactly level either, so it's quite a challenging last corner. Very easy to ruin the lap. Again, looking for the 100-meter board, and you are braking you're not even close to the 100-meter board actually. You're like, if you look, there's the 50, and there's the, so you're braking about 120, 115 meters, give or take. I mean, by the time you're full brake, sorry, you are much closer to the 100-meter board. So that's your rough braking reference. I'll play the corner fluidly first. Braking heavy, we opted for fourth gear. You can definitely use third here though, down to preference. And then that's that corner, really nice and smoothly done. We opted for the higher gears throughout this lap just for traction. Down on the so yeah, I'll break it down. Sorry, heavy on the brakes, and then yeah, the circuit is on the apex is a little bit off camber, only slightly, but you will feel it means that if you run out of grip if you've not got the car rotated into the corner by this point, so it's very easy to overshoot. We opt for fourth gear. You can use third gear through here, down to preference. We get on the power, and the circuit rises up a little bit here again, so you've got to be so delicate on the power. And we bang, full power, fourth gear. That's the advantage of the high gears, is getting on the traction. And then you're saving the distance, DRS open, and it's all about saving the distance into that section. And that is some sectors as well, if it's of any relevancy. I mean, this was done in like 8 months ago or whatever. Well, this was like so long ago anyway, so I have no idea if it's even relevant anymore. Yeah, hope you guys found this video useful. Let me know if it was in the comments. I'm open to suggestions and advice or anything like that. If you guys want to see specific things in these track guides, because I want to make them useful for you guys. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope you found this useful. Let me know if it helps you in the comments, please, as well. I really I love hearing your guys' feedback on that. So yeah. Thanks for watching, love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So take care everybody, love you all, and